Hello and welcome. This is Jesse Gilmore, and welcome to the Time Mastery series for marketing agency owners. And what we're going to end up doing over the next few weeks of YouTube videos is really going to be taking the best parts of our Leverage for Growth programs, really focused on time mastery, and basically distilling it down into actionable things that you can do to really carve out 8 to 10 hours per week for you to work on your business. And this is ultimately one of the foundational steps that basically allows the rest of the Leverage for Growth program for us scaling marketing agency owners from $15,000 per month to $100,000 per month. In less than 12 months. It was all based around this fundamental core concept of carving out 8 to 10 hours per week to work on the business. And then basically, once you have those 8 to 10 hours, you're able to work on different parts of your business that allow growth to simply be a byproduct of doing business. So what I'm planning on doing over the next few weeks is really just giving back, giving a lot of value, because as we're shifting our own Leverage for Growth programs and to be less on content, more on implementation and kind of collaboration with our masterminds, we're going to be giving back to the community really based around content. So this is going to be a snapshot of time mastery, and we're going to work it through a series. 101 is really based around kind of the foundations. So this is going to be a bit more about kind of awareness and assessment. So you're going to be able to kind of look at your own use of time, because your use of time dictates your relationship to the business, and your relationship to the business determines growth, right? And it's all really based around this transition from being that kind of hustler in your business to really being the CEO of your agency. So without further ado, I'm going to get right started. We'll talk a little bit about kind of some core concepts, such as not all the work that ends up on your task list is equal of your time. And then starting to get into kind of, working in versus on the business. And then we're going to get into actual practical assessment of your current use of time. And then from there, we'll use that as a basis for all future trainings, because as you know, in marketing, you need data in order for you to optimize, and that's basically what we're going to be starting off with. So over the next few weeks, again, this is a one-on-one. We'll get into carving out the time next week once we have that data, right? And then from there, we're going to go into like power habits and disciplines, and then really optimizing a sleep schedule. And then going forward, we'll start using this time management, not just for you, but also for your team, and then how that plays out based around getting them to be optimized as well. And then lastly, we'll start getting into some of the numbers and the metrics of an organization's utilization and stuff. But we'll start with our foundation. So 101, I'm going to get started right now. So really, the idea is that not all the work that you do is equal. And what this means is that many business owners believe that they have to do everything as it comes up. So when a client calls, they answer. When a team member sends out a group message, they must be the first one to respond. And when their task list isn't getting done, they start to work over the weekend to complete it. And the problem is that managing a business this way ultimately is neat and tidy, but it's not really what a CEO does. A CEO knows that not all the work that ends up on their task list is equal their priority. And a CEO also knows that they need to have a certain amount of time to get the highest priority work done. And some things are actually intentionally left out. And the fact is that some work, when it comes to you, is not worth your time. But for some reason, many business owners feel compelled to say yes to everything. So just be aware that saying yes to one thing means that you're saying no to another, since time is a finite resource. Now, it's also important to just understand the difference between value and non-value added work. When it comes to business, this is where we get into things called like a value stream, and just really understanding how everything kind of feeds your pipeline, from a prospect to an appointment to a client, and actually moving them through the client agreement. And then non-value added work, which is really based around things that are not really connected to that value stream. It's also known as waste. And really, when we're starting to look at your use of time, we can kind of put it into two different kind of buckets when it comes to the business side. And it really, you're either working in the business or you're working on the business. And working in the business is really where you are an employee, right? And if you're familiar with cash flow quadrants by Robert Kiyosaki, this is really that S or self-employment quadrant, really where you have that hustler mentality. You're doing anything and everything impossible to make the business stay afloat. And really in this role as a founder, you really just own a job. And perfectionism ends up becoming your greatest obstacle to growth. It's harder to delegate because you're working in the business. You're too close to it. You're kind of like looking at the trees and not seeing the forest, right? And the example is that, maybe you're working with some contractors and then you start jumping in to fix the mistakes before a client sees the work. That would be an example of working in the business. Working on the business is really where, a founder is a visionary and you're focused on business. You're in the cash flow quadrant, you'd be a business owner, and you really own a business. You're not really owning a job. And the key is based around delegation and control. And these become your biggest competitive advantages. Now, an example it would be where improving communication and process checklists with contractors in order to consistently deliver premium quality right the first time. So when you're looking at working in the business, you're irreplaceable in your business, and you must complete certain tasks in the business that are critical in order for you to complete the client agreements and client fulfillment processes, right? You haven't been able to fully let go or delegate to others. When you're working in the business, you're looking at your business as a system, and you're starting to make improvements to that system in order to further enhance growth, development of people, clarity of vision, and so forth. And so at the end of this training series, you'll be working on and through a process of carving out 8 to 10 hours per week for you to work on your business. As you can take this even further, you can deepen your understanding of how this use of time is actually a foundation of your transition from hustler to CEO in your agency. Now, there are a couple different stages of awakening, and this is the reason why we're kind of doing an awareness stage first, is really based around the first step in any change is really based around self-awareness. And when you become aware, you start to make choices based around your own unique direction. And you begin to step away from conformity and start to lead yourself, right? And then eventually you start to learn how to manage yourself to keep you focused. And this leads towards others wanting to follow you. And then leadership of others becomes a byproduct of you leading yourself first. And this is the reason why it's important to understand your use of time, because it is the foundation from which everything else can build. So we're going to get into a time log assignment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the resource here. Oh, there was my other one. There we go. Here. So what you can do from starting off, this resource will end up being in the YouTube video description. So with every one of our resources that I give in the YouTube channel, you can go up to here and make a copy for yourself. Same thing with the actual weekly time log. So I'm going to read this and then I'll go into the actual time log. So the key is actually just to start to capture every half an hour for 7 days what you do in that half an hour. And you're going to want to be as honest and transparent about your use of time as humanly possible. So yes, like social media scrolling, capture it. Sleep, capture it. Looking for a new lamp on Amazon, capture it. Watching Netflix, capture it. All those should be included. So anything that is going on every half an hour for 7 days. And you want to be as detailed as necessary and to include both personal and work-related activities. The more specific you are, the more you're going to get out of the next time management activities where we're eliminating things that are not worth your time. We're starting to delegate. We're automating, right? We can't really optimize your time and really get to the point where you do carve out those 8 to 10 hours per week for you to work on your business and effectively scale without you getting really raw about your use of time. So the weekly time log looks like this. I'm going to move myself over here. Cool. And so pretty simple. You can make a copy for yourself right up top here. And then once you have it, you're going to want to change today's date. So this is today's date right now, but if it was, like let's say the 25th, right? It'll actually change the dates down here, right? So from this, what you do is it's basically very, very simple. You have a time log every half an hour for an entire day, right? And you're going to want to fill out every single part of this. Now, the cool thing is that you can, once it's all completed, you can search for different things. So if you want to know how much sleep you're getting throughout the week, you can basically just, search for sleep, right? If you want to know how many email times you're checking emails, you can check that too. So really, it's a good tool, at least for a capturing of what's going on. So you basically want to fill out each one of these. I have two different examples, and I'll kind of walk through an example of a client when we first started off. So when we first started off, I had one of my clients go through this, and they were very raw and real about what was going on. And so I started looking at it, and I noticed that there was Twitter a lot. So Twitter, and then gaming and things like that. So then what I did was I searched for Twitter. And let me move this over here. 98. Okay. So that's a lot of time on Twitter. And so from there, what we learned was, okay, your sleep patterns are not necessarily the greatest, staying up until almost 4 a.m. And another time where it was kind of getting distracting in the middle of some of the time. So from this, we went through, so we did it a couple different weeks, right? And so I was like, all right, well, we got to get rid of Twitter. And he was like, well, what do you mean? I was like, totally get rid of Twitter. He's like, well, I want to keep up with, the news and things like that. And I was like, okay, you can time box it for 1 hour on a Saturday after lunch, right? And what he did was he goes, okay. So he went back up and did another time log. And so I looked at this one, and then I noticed gaming kind of started to be the new thing. So gaming ends up becoming another kind of addiction, right? Thing that's kind of distracting him from growing the business, focusing on the team, the growth, and the systems, and so forth. And once we got rid of gaming and Twitter, he was able to really have a lot of certainty and confidence, and understood actually a couple different team members that needed to be replaced. He was able to kind of look at his business in a different way. And that is an example of, maybe a more extreme example of how powerful doing a time log actually is. It's not that fun for like the 7, unless you're like a really detail-oriented person. It's not really that fun to do, but it is ultimately very, very powerful. And so your first step in this whole process is really just to get really good data. And so what you're going to do is you're going to go through the next 7 days, and you're going to complete a weekly time log. And every half an hour, write it down. Don't go off of your Google Calendar and then just assuming that what you had planned, was the actual. It's not. Make sure that you fill out every single square in here because it's going to be really beneficial for you. Because what we're going to do in the next training is going to be looking at this time log and starting to look at different ways that we can carve out the time. My goal for you and this YouTube channel and the series is really just to make it to where you're not actually working harder or longer to achieve scale. Because scale is simple. But it's just not easy to do by yourself. And it's also not easy to do without some type of process. And so really what I want to do is have you get started with this time log. And then see me in the next training after you've done your time log. And then what we'll do is we'll start carving out that time. So you're not working an additional 8 to 10 hours. You're actually carving out that 8 to 10 hours per week for you to work on your business, which is ultimately the fundamental core concept of leverage for growth that allows us to scale agencies from 15,000 per month to over 100,000 per month in 12 months. Cool? All right. I'll see you in the next training.